Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are out there in the world. It's time for another episode of the SoundTraxx Soundbites podcast. This is the train talk from milepost 141, and we're here in rainy Colorado. So today we're actually really excited. And for those of you who are familiar with our area, we're kind of high desert. So when it comes to getting rain, a lot of people are ready to run outside and go dance in the rain because we certainly need it, especially once summer hits and you got the heat outside and it becomes a fire hazard. Really isn't something that people want to. So anytime we can get moisture in our area, we're all thrilled to death. And it's been a nice slow rain. So it started, we're recording this on Monday, but it actually started Sunday afternoon and has been kind of steady all Monday, and we're supposed to end sometime Tuesday, and then I think we're supposed to get a little bit of the last part of it on Thursday. So we're really excited about that. So anyway, but when we're releasing this, it's not necessarily the same day, so you don't need to go checking the weather maps or anything like that. But anyway, we're really excited about this particular episode. I've got a special guest. I'll bring him on here in just a little bit. This is another fellow model railroader who was actually the winner of our last installation contest. So we'll talk with Chris over here in a little bit, and we'll kind of get his perspective on SoundTraxx and our decoders and how he uses it. But first I wanted to kind of show off one of the latest projects. And I say latest, I've actually done this one about 6 months ago. For those of you guys who are on audio, this is a InterMountain Tier 4 GEVO that I've upgraded with a Blunami now. If you're interested about this model and what kind of features and settings and all that kind of stuff I've done to this model in the past, you can actually go to our YouTube channel and search SoundTraxx InterMountain Tier 4 21-pin install or setup, I think it is. But anyway, what you're going to do is that's an hour-long video. I go out and explain all of the features of the decoder and how I'm using them and my settings, so that way when you go in and you decide you want to implement that particular feature, you can actually see how I did it. You can try it out that way if you so choose, but you can also decide that, well, no, I don't like that setting, but now I understand the setting, so now you can find a setting that works for you and your operators. But this video was shot late at night at my old place about 3 years ago, I think it is, or 4 years ago now. So it's a little bit ago, but it does go into full detail. And with this particular model, they had come with some of the lights already mounted into the model, but not all of them. Now I have my screen record here on my phone so you can see. Now this is the first BNSF model of mine that I've upgraded to the Blunami, and I haven't done the others yet. But the good news is, because it is still a Tsunami 2 at its heart, you can still run it with, or I guess in my case, I can still run it with my other Tsunami 2 BNSF model. So I can still build a consist, run these locomotives together on a layout. You'll never know the difference. And I'm working on upgrading the other BNSF models to get to a Blunami. But as you guys have seen in a lot of our past videos and podcast videos here, that I've been focusing a lot more on my Missouri Pacific stuff because, well, I've expanded my layout. So I kind of got excited and really wanted to build more of the Missouri Pacific layout locomotives to run on the layout, so that way with the new expansion, that now I can have more trains running on the layout. So now I could technically have 4 people operating on the layout. And so that's why I've been focusing on the Missouri Pacific stuff. But with my BNSF, it's kind of an aside, because if you've seen these things running by at night, they are lit up like a Christmas tree. There's lights all over the place. And so it's more than just a headlight and backup light. And so when I started on the BNSF stuff, it really was kind of a, can I do this and how well can I do this? And this started years ago. I was sitting out at Kansas City Union Station, and we weren't actually at the Union Station. We were across the street at the Jack Stack Barbecue, and I was sitting out with couple of the guys from Athearn, and we're watching trains going by and seeing all the lights. And that's when I was noticing it was about the 2016, 2017 era, I want to say. And that's when these micro LEDs started really becoming more popular. And so I'm watching these things and I'm like, well, now with these new LEDs, we can do that. So they challenged me. So I started doing it and it became an illness. Excuse me. And so now I've got a fleet of about 7 or 8 BNSF models that I'll take around with me when I travel to operate, whether I'm going to a club layout or a specific layout. For example, a lot of times when we go to Denver, we go to John Parker's layout, who you guys may be familiar with, his BNSF Fall River Division layout. Gorgeous layout, but I get to run my trains there every now and then. And so anyway, on this model here, I'm not going to be able to show you all around. I'll maybe put some stills inside here and some B-roll. But basically with the locomotive, of course, there's always the headlight. But using the app, and you can see the screenshot above me somewhere here, when I hit the 15 to 28, now you can see I've got my ditch lights. Now on the BNSF, they don't alternate and flash, so they take up one function output, so they both come on together. Then I've got the number boards, and the number boards would be illuminated depending on the locomotive, because the number boards would usually be illuminated only on the locomotive of record. So using the BNSF, it may be a whole mixture of letters and numbers to identify the train number, but then there'll be an identifier with the locomotive 3888 as the lead somewhere along the lines. And so that way the other crews know that this locomotive is the lead of that. Let's see, I think there's like a Portland PO or PT or PD, whatever it is, LAX or something, and then depending on the manifest or something. I'm not by any stretch going to be a expert on modern train symbols, but I know there's a whole list of letters and numbers, and they usually mean port of origin, port of destination, and then the type of train is mixed in there somewhere. But the number boards are important because they would typically be illuminated on the locomotive of record. And for those of you guys who follow our YouTube channel, that's going to be our Operations 101 video. If it hasn't already posted, will be posted soon, because we need to get back to those Operations 101. Those have been really popular, so want to get back to that. Anyway, on this one here, I've also got the ground lights. Some people call them the truck lights. But they're typically there so that the crew can look down and notice that the locomotive is moving. Because when you're sitting in the cab and it's dark outside, you're in the middle of nowhere. Let's say it's no moon out there, there's no stars, cloud cover, whatever. You can't hardly see anything. Well, if you start throttling up, it may feel like you're moving, but you may not actually be moving. So the idea behind the ground lights is so the engineer can go out and look down and see the ground moving and know, okay, I do have my traction motors are actually working instead of my wheels slipping, because it'll feel like it is, and then that may cause the track to look like it's moving from the engineer's perspective. But this way we can look down and see, because when you're talking about thousands of tons, you may only be moving a few inches at a time, and so therefore we can actually see that. Now the BNSF models typically don't use it or don't have them. Some people will claim they weren't equipped with it. Some people will say they are. I put it on it because I like it. It's just fun. It adds another element to the locomotive, and it's another light that we can see. But I can, if somebody wants to tell me they don't use them, okay, I just turn them off. Oh, look, they're not there. But anyway, here on the courtesy lights, I have the 4 step lights located all the way around the model. And then I've got the 4 walkway courtesy lights, which are one on the front and rear porch. And then I have the one on the long hood over the step on the engineer's side. But then back on the back of the fireman's side, where for those of you watching on video, you can actually see there's actually a light there by the brake wheel. And that's actually a brake status indicator. There's usually 2 lights there that will turn on based on whether the brake's applied or released, so that way a crew walking through there doesn't have to look around and try to see if the springs are tensioned or the chain or whatever. They can just see really quickly. But from our perspective, especially in HO, you can't hardly tell that there's 2 lights there, so I just put 1 light there. And the way I wired these up is the 4 courtesy lights are all wired in series, and then the 4 step lights are wired in series. And then the sets are paralleled together. And the reason for that is because each of the lighting outputs on the decoder are only rated for 100 milliamps. And so if I tried to wire those up individually, that's 8 LEDs, all drawing 20 milliamps. That's 160 milliamps, which is higher than the 100 milliamps the decoder is rated for. But if I put the 4 LEDs in series, parallel the 4 LEDs in series, I'm actually closer to about 40 to 50 milliamp current draw versus 160 milliamp current draw. So I stay below that 100 milliamp threshold, and I still put my resistor in there so it gets those lights, because they're not intended to be as bright as headlights. They're just there to be a little bit dimmer, so to help the crew be able to navigate around the locomotive without tripping and falling and causing a suit or a work hazard. So, but anyway, the last thing is I have my rear headlight. That's controlled by a separate button, because in the real world, the engineer doesn't turn off the headlight and turn on the backup light to make a switching move. Usually what will happen is if they're just backing up, the lead unit, usually multiple units, they wouldn't even turn off the headlight, may not even turn off the ditch lights, depending on what they're doing. But if those are all separately controlled, so that way I can more faithfully reproduce the work that the railroad crew is doing in that regard. But with them being on here separately, now if this locomotive is running long hood forward, or let's say I set it up as a DPU, I could actually turn on that light and dim it, and then control the locomotive from the consist address as I'm running the train. So it gives me that flexibility to, again, more realistically control the locomotives. As I mentioned, this is an InterMountain Tier 4 that I've upgraded with Blunami 2 originally. It's got a Blunami in it now, but I've also got 4 cube speakers in it, which really enhances that low-end frequency. And those 4 speakers are actually able to reproduce down to 100 hertz, which is a fairly low frequency, especially considering the speaker's only, a 15 millimeter by 12 millimeter wide. So it actually does really good. But the problem is that when you put 1 or 2, that low frequency tends to get dissipated through the atmospheric air before it reaches our ears. But when you put 4, now those 4 speakers are all working together to reproduce that low frequency. And now it can travel to your ear because it's got the power, aka the pressure or the volume, to get to our ears and hear it. And this particular model, for whatever reason, when I put the 4 cube speakers in there was so much air pressure, it actually rattled the shell. So I had to put some electrical tape on the sides of the motor and the frame to try to minimize that shell rattling, because it was putting out so much. The other thing I did was I drilled out the exhaust stack here on the Tier 4 silencer, and then I put some of the box foam that you would usually see in like Athearn or something like that underneath of there, so that way you can look down, but you don't see necessarily the a shallow hole with a flat place where they just cast it in, but now it looks like it goes somewhere, and then that pipe just dissipates, so that black foam kind of hides that. So there's your little modeling tip for the day. Sorry, first day with my new mouth. But anyway, so these are just some of the things that I did. And so just to kind of give you the feel for it, I'm going to go ahead and blow the air horn, and it should come through. The microphone's okay. So you can really hear that low frequency, and I'll go ahead and get it started up. And with the fuel loading coming on, or the fuel low pressure coming on, we'll let it fire up, and I'll imbibe it a little bit real quick. Don't worry, this is just water. I'm at work, people. Now, remember, as I've talked to people before, my volumes tend to be pretty low. So, it's coming through, but it may not sound like you're standing next to the real thing, and it's not intended to. This is what's called scale sound, which means when I'm seeing the real thing, how much am I hearing from that distance? So we'll go ahead and crank it up and let you hear the low frequency. So you can really hear how that low frequency kicks in. And then with the dynamic digital exhaust, you can hear that prime mover back off as my locomotive coasts to a stop. So you can imagine with this type of these 4 cube speakers, and you put that among multiple locomotives, and you put that heavy train behind it, you can really get a realistic, really gorgeous experience. So I went ahead and shut it down, so that way it's not to interfere with my next guest. So that's just kind of one of the fun things there. I've done some videos to show you how to add the step lights on our YouTube video and things like that. So be sure to check out our YouTube channel to get some information like that. So this is one of my fun projects. I enjoy it, and I certainly love showing it off. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop my screen record now so that our video editor doesn't have 30 minutes of just dead screen record trying to find the right place to chime in. So anyway, with that, I wanted to bring in my friend Chris Brown. Chris has been a avid SoundTraxx user for a long time. I've been talking to him off and on through the years, and through no influence of my own, he actually was able to win our installation contest we ran a few months ago. And he did a fantastic job, and everybody agreed. They showed it to me, and I said, I can't vote because I know who that is. So they were able to pick him without me chiming in at all. So with that, Chris, I know you've been waiting along on the side, so want to welcome you in and take a moment, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you very much for having me. First off, I just want to say how much I appreciate you having me on the show. I have been around railroads my whole life. My mom said some of the first drawings I ever did were of locomotives. I don't remember them, but I do remember growing up in southwestern Michigan, and there was a railroad through the town just a block away. And it was primarily, this was in the 70s. So it was primarily B&O, C&O, and Chessie. And then I had moved to St. Joe, which isn't far away. It's right on the lake, straight across from Chicago. And there was, again, another set of tracks. And I later learned that the one set was a siding. And as soon as I could hear a horn blow in the distance, you'd see me running down there, because by then I was about 9, and I was just so in awe, looking up at this behemoth of engines going by and being able to feel the ground shake under me. And it gets in your blood. So yeah, my first set was from 1977. And I know anybody that's been on the eBay or has had a Tyco set probably remembers this. And I had the whole set. My dad bought it for me, I think a day or two before my birthday in November. And I'm like, can I please have it? And he said, that's your Christmas present. And I knew it was coming. And you talk about having to have patience. But when I busted that thing out, I was sold. And from that point on, I had gone through the evolution of different brands that ran smoother, and yeah, I think it wasn't until 2000 or 2001 at the latest that a friend of mine had started to tell me about DCC. And I saw it in passing, but I didn't quite fully understand. And then I dove in, and I got just regular decoders and tried those. And the other first locomotive that had sound in it already had sound, but it was a different company. And it didn't matter what it sounded like. It was just awesome to me. And so that hooked me. That brings in the level of realism that goes along with operating. And the more realistic it is, the more fun it is. You can got to get a sense of the tonnage you're pulling with some of the acceleration or deceleration rates. The DEE, what was that stand for again? Dynamic digital exhaust. Yes, and I'm pretty sure we both have our setup the same. So, and I forgot exactly. I know you set up in a CV, and I could be wrong. I think it's 114, but anyway, it allows you to go in and set up if you want your dynamic brakes. Is it called engine interlock?
Yeah, there's prime mover interlock or loco, or I forget there's the interlock, there's the notch rate, then of course the dynamic brake effect and auto start. And that's one, believe it or not, we still get calls about people who don't know how that we can turn off the automatic startup of our decoders. It was interesting. I had a customer, this was a couple years now, he actually called up and said, I really love your guys' decoders. It's so much better than everything else out there, but I just can't get over the fact that it starts up when you put the track power down.
Yeah.
I said to him, literally, I've got 500 CVs. You don't think that's an adjustment?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll tell you real quick, for those people the reason it's on there is because there's something satisfying about doing an installation, especially if it's your first one, and you're a little apprehensive. You don't know if you got everything right. You put it on the track and it starts making noise. That kind of gives you that instant relief, as opposed to, now you got to grab a throttle or whatever it is and start trying to run it. And so that's why we have it enabled. But it is just a setting. But like you said, it's in CV114, which is the exhaust control. And then the dynamic digital exhaust settings are actually in the 2.503, 2.504, and 2.512.
And it's worth doing. It's worth going through the manual. And that's how I came up, through different decoders. But then when I started using Tsunami, I was lucky enough to be able to get my hands on things. And as long as I could put it back in the package, I was allowed to test everything, because everybody looked to me for opinions. And there's pretty much, I got to the point that even like the RS1s and RS3s, I was putting 1-inch speakers in, and I had called some of the installers that do it on regular, and they're like, that can't be done. And so I wasn't looking for a fight. I just wanted to see what they would say. And with a little patience and care, they go in and they sounded phenomenal. So I did a few for the friend that ran that hobby shop, and people standing around couldn't believe how loud it was, because you don't have much of a hood.
No, and especially if you go back to some of those Atlas ones where the motor was pretty tall, and then they had these two little weights over the front and rear gear tower.
Yes.
And that was pretty much it, because the frame itself weighed almost nothing.
Yes.
So you had to be creative.
Yes. So the speaker would always go in the cab, and I would make I want to say it's like a plus sign, but it's barely a plus sign. It just has a little notch cut out in each corner. And then I would take a pair of are they calipers? You'd use them for drafting. One side would have lead and the other has the point, like a compass.
Oh, you're talking about compass.
Yes. But I would put a sharp and keep it very sharp.
Oh, yeah.
And run that around on the styrene until I got the desired hole. And then I'd punch that out, put the speaker in, mount it up in there. And then you kind of have the front and the back that is wide open. And you don't want the sound, because as soon as a speaker is up or down, it's going to create a negative pressure. Mm-hmm. And your sound is just going to go, it doesn't totally cancel it, but you're really, really hurting yourself. So in this case, I would consider it sealed, because I put a little piece between that and the body on each side and would glue it up.
Okay.
And just stay clear of the headlight. And they sounded, like I said, amazing. But if anybody ever tries that, like get a new decoder, like it doesn't have to be wired. Mm-hmm. And you dangle that thing and just play the sounds, you hardly hear it. It's so tinny. And I challenged people. I said, just for fun, make an OK symbol, mm-hmm. like put the speaker in there. If it's a round one, that's all I deal with other than cubes. And then slowly bring your fist around it and listen. It's almost like a phase change, and it gets loud and you can hear the bass in it. I mean, there's a fair amount of bass in that speaker, and it really, really surprised me. So when I show people that, They're quite amazed.
We did a demonstration similar to that in our webinar number 5 on our YouTube channel, where we took the bass speaker and just kind of laid it there. But then we just took like a household, food storage container. And this was about a 2.5-inch speaker that really sounded like it was about 3/4 of an inch or maybe even smaller. But then you put that container just up against it, and suddenly now it feels like a subwoofer. It was amazing, the difference. And a lot of people don't realize the importance of a baffle.
Oh, yeah, very much so. I mean, I know a lot of people that want to upgrade and do these things. Some are on a fixed income. And so and that's the way I grew up. I didn't have money. We were extremely poor. So anytime I can find a trick or some way to get the very most out of what I purchase and put my hard-earned dollar toward, you can bet that I've done tons of research. And not to get off track, but if you back up in my history a little bit, I think my first run-ins was with car stereos, and I could barely afford the stereo as it was. Like I said, very poor. And then I just took it upon myself to figure out what wire did what, and started installation of my own, and it grew from there. And as I got older, I learned a lot about sound and how it works. Most people, they just they take it for granted. But built into the decoder, you've got your reverb, and you've got even an echo, which typically sound is broken down to direct, like you're hearing me right now. Mm-hmm. But if we were in a small room, you're going to get what's called early reflection, where it bounces off no more than one wall to your ear. And then the third one you have, even if your eyes are closed, you can kind of guess, reverberation, where you have sound bouncing off several walls. Your ear is picking up all 3 of these. And in your decoder, it has adjustments for all 3. So it can sound like it's in a small area, or it can sound like it's in a big area. Mm-hmm. The echo would come in very well if, say, you're in a tunnel. But it's all there. It's like the more I mess with these decoders, and that's why I'm such an avid fan. Mm-hmm. I will not be forced into anybody else's. And that's not me. That's just my opinion. Everybody's got an opinion. And my opinion is SoundTraxx is the best. And that's why that's all I've installed since they've come out. And I've never had any issues. And I love learning. It's very important, I would say, for people to go to the manuals, get this information in your hands. I still don't go to I don't have everything memorized, but I have some of the main things. Like if I show up and I'm like, can't hear my engine, or, ooh, that's too loud. I don't, some people that don't have sound don't want to hear just yours. It's annoying. And so I can go right into the program on the rail and change 128 to whatever I want. And so some CVs are stuck in my head because I'll use them a lot.
Yep.
As you had said, and I saw your most recent podcast about the Blunami and how it is so straightforward to be able to go in, see your adjustments, and it's pretty much black and white. At that point, you can pretty much not carry a manual like I do. I'm just a bit old school.
Yeah.
But the Blunami, for, I would say, the majority of, because I've been at a lot of different clubs, and people are so afraid to touch these CVs. They're like, oh, I'm going to screw something up. But if it's laid right out in front of them, CV 120, well, we know it, but they don't. So They can go straight to bell and say, horn, and go through them, have a quick little sample, and be like, that's the one I want, hit okay. Mm-hmm. And It's just straightforward in English. It's not anything that should freak them out. But I get it. A lot of people are afraid to give it that try. If you can get past that, especially with the Blunami, it is very intuitive, and that's important, because if you're going to enjoy your hobby, you need to be able to have something like that just adds to. And all the decoders, they come on address 3. I think most of us know that. And out of the box, as soon as they get power, they they're going to start right up. And it's baby steps. You don't learn this stuff overnight, but I can tell you, I am so glad that I had pushed myself. And the other thing I must say is there hasn't been a single time I've called SoundTraxx with a question that somebody hasn't been able to pick up the phone and answer it. And even if I don't fully understand it, like, okay, I hear you, but why? I get an explanation. You don't get that. There's other companies, I'm not going to mention, there's other companies that I have dealt with extensively in the past, and that was there, and it's long been gone. And it would have been much harder to get through the basics of the DCC system and how to wire and do things without being able to talk to somebody. But you guys are always there. And I just kind of picked where I'm sitting here also because everything's made in the US. Your company's US based. And I like that. I really like that. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So when it comes to my models and everything, George is the same way. That's why we probably kind of click and laugh about the same things. So what he's showing on his locomotive is basically what I did. I just don't have the side lights. I just have the steps. I do have the ground lights and everything. I just don't have the ones along the side. But we're kind of on the same page, so we kind of laugh about the same kind of things and everything. But
it somewhat becomes a challenge because we keep daring each other. Oh, you should try that light, or that should try that light.
Yeah, you had mentioned a brand that wasn't too friendly, because we knew what we were going to do. Mm-hmm. We want SoundTraxx.
Yep.
And for you and me, it's not gonna stop us. It's gonna happen. Yep. And they're trying to lead you in a direction. I don't like that. That is sort of a monopoly. And there's a lot of people out there that they're just kind of stuck with it because they don't know better. But I had done, as you know, a series, and I tend to go pretty deep into some of it. And that's only because I want somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience to be able to try it.
Yep.
I'm not trying to bore the people that, do this on a regular and just want to skip to, okay, I see where you're going, but what resistor and all that. And I list all that out. So you can either watch the short version, which I think, when I won the contest, and I'm still so thankful for that. And I look at that.
Like I said, folks, I had nothing to do with it.
When I won, and I don't win much, but it was needed because I'd gotten like 6 of these things in a row, and it's a lot of work. But it's just an awesome product. I can't, Yep. And they're not telling me to say this, but I am a perfectionist, and it's got to look and sound a certain way, and that's what I get every time. I had installed one in the steam engine, and it became kind of I think it was a redheaded stepchild because it had been used but very lightly and returned.
Gotcha.
And I'm not saying this is going to happen every time, and George might even remember this, but
I remember it.
It wasn't behaving the way it was supposed to, and I had already installed the decoder, and it lurched forward and then stopped, and I cut the power really quick. I'm like, I've never seen that. And I tried it again, and it did the same thing. I said, okay, that's enough. And to open some of the steam engines can be kind of a trick by itself, because there's a lot of stuff you got to pull to get the two halves apart, because that's how this model was.
Yep.
And I think just to make it easy, instead of doing like a proper insulation or changing anything that was there, they just put a tiny little square of electrical tape over the tabs on each side of the motor. And what had happened is they must have been in a hurry, because it's kind of pressed up against there when you sandwich everything. And so it was making contact with one of the rails, which is a big no-no. And so I moved the insulating piece where it was supposed to be, and it ran beautifully. And I'm like, I'm not saying that's going to happen every time, but to do that to a decoder, and after I had rectified the situation, I'm like, that's what happened. Someone bought this thing, tried to put a DCC decoder in. It either burned it up or they weren't going to get into it and returned it. So that was the problem. Once I was done, it ran beautifully. And even with something that bad, that decoder it worked fine. So, I mean, what else can I ask for? That's not me saying if you short one out, it's going to take it. Typically, that's the letting the smoke out, as they say. kind of a joke.
Yeah, I've heard that phrase. But it kind of speaks to a lot of things, because we get questions all the time. Hey, my decoder's doing this or my decoder's doing that. But folks, it's not always the decoder. A lot of times, like Chris was talking about, it could be something in the model itself. Just because it's brand new doesn't mean the wheels are perfectly clean, doesn't mean that everything's properly wired. And that's why you want to test a lot of the things to make sure how everything's working, so that way, excuse me, but that way, before you get into it, you don't damage the decoder. But the good news is that if you do run into that, I know myself, I've been a modeler since I was 14, and Chris has been around for a long time as well. What was this? You said 77, so that's probably, 40, 50, almost 50 years ago?
Yeah, it is, because I'm 55 now. Yeah. So we're pretty close to the same age.
Right.
It wasn't until DCC came along that I was like, then I was totally hooked.
Yep.
That's when I was like, what can I do to learn more and take full advantage? Just like speaker enclosures and where you put speakers, it's very important to make sure they're not just hanging, or if they're in like a tiny little cup. Some of them, and I'm going to pick on MTH just a little because we both have one. They got two little cups in the fuel tank, and your friend did.
I did that for a friend of mine.
That's right. And I ended up opening a cut like this tiny little D off to the side in the top part of the cap, because when it was totally enclosed, that 1-inch speaker, when the cap was on, it was close enough to touch the magnet. It was within a few thousandths of touching the magnet. And with any speaker that's higher than a tweeter, you need airspace. And if you can't get it by volume, then you have to have some kind of opening, and you want to do it in a way, again, so it's not so close to the speaker where the air pressure just goes back and forth, because then that kills the sound. Mm-hmm. But and you don't have to do a little D. That's just, I don't know.
Something to open it up.
I'm a little weird when it comes to that stuff. You can simply just drill a 1/4-inch hole in that thing, and then when you put everything together, because your video shows it, then it becomes an infinite baffle, just meaning it's not closed, but the air can flow in and out of that hole, and it's far enough away that it's not going to cancel your speaker. And they sound, I just put them up, but they sound amazing. They're extremely heavy, and I'm very pleased with the way it turned out.
And of course, that's after you upgraded to SoundTraxx products. It wasn't using. I just want to clarify that that's not the original sound that came with those models.
No, they were silent, and I had a pair, and I sold them, which I regretted. And then a friend of mine had the same pair, so we worked out a deal. And I've never been real impressed with factory lights, so I think I kept the factory light, but I'd cut that trace pretty short and then put the LED right up against the back. You got to make sure you polish that trace, or else you're going to diffuse your light.
Right.
That just means you're trying to shine light through, let's say, a piece of plexiglass that has been sanded a lot. You can imagine you're not going to blast near as much light through that.
Well, it's the same way.
It diffuses.
It's the same way, like if you're in an office setting like I am right here, you've got the lights that have typically, or the fluorescents, or in our case, they're the LEDs, but they have the diffusers over them, which is kind of like that frosted looking panel. And the idea is so that you don't get direct shine, that it diffuses it and disperses it, you get more even lighting. And so that's what you're trying not to do with your models, is you want to try to get as much of that focal light as you can, because any of those diffusers weaken the light brilliance.
So I don't have it here, but it's a CSX, and I've got two sets. One's Athearn Genesis, and then one's the MTH. And in both of them, I do have videos that I could link, but I had removed the housing very carefully because they're glued on there with CA, and removed the light pipe and just allowed that path to be the path for my wiring, which is great. And it's not easy, but if you can I use 402 LEDs, and once I wire those up, I'll put a tiny bit of glue on just below the LED, which would be on the insulation. Move that up into its new happy home in the housing, and line it up with the lens. And I usually do it with a little bit of power on. Now, the only bad part about that is you got to almost hold your breath, because you want it to set up, right?
Right.
But once it finally does, and then you got to do the other side, put it back together, it is insanely bright. Now, I do have one of the B&Os here. This is one of the Rapidos, and it's got the Miniatronics bulb in it that it really makes it look incandescent. And then for any other light, I think we both do this. We hit it with just a very light coat of, what's the brand?
Tamiya.
Tamiya, clear yellow. And you want to do it while it's on, and then that way it's easier to put on. And then if you put too much on, just let it sit a little bit and come back. Small brush, very small brush, with just a tiny bit of thinner, and just carefully. It's almost like an artistic thing, and you're just trying to match the light. So I have one here, and I'm going to aim it right at the camera at first. I am a firm believer of putting current keeper in every locomotive. I don't, not so much for my own layout, but other layouts. That's one of the things that get overlooked so often. And I really enjoy the realism. And when you hit a dirty patch of track and the sound cuts out and all that, and it's not your fault, it's the track, it's not, but with these current keepers, I've never had them stop once. And I always take two fingers and run it across the rail. I'm like, oh, that's horrible. And it's never cut out. So I'm going to just lift this up and aim it right at the camera. You're going to see the front where I've replaced the headlight. You might see the number boards. I don't blare them. I get them as close to real life. You should, and it may show up a bit brighter every time I do a video. The lights show up a bit brighter, but the class lights and then a walkway light. And I don't have an answer for this. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but the step lights in all four corners, they tend to be the first thing that dies when I take it off. But it does have the current keeper.
Yeah, that's nice and bright.
That is a headlight. And then the other, it looks good. You can see the walkway light. You can see the, and now it's dimming a little bit more than it did. But that is what I am looking for. When I turn off the lights and that is on the track, I'll set it to the side so I don't short something.
Yep.
you either turn out the lights or dim the lights quite a bit, and it's shining down the rail. And when I get eye level, it's like, oh wow, that looks real. It's not just where something barely comes on like an indicator in your car. This is a headlight.
Well, you did a series on how to do those Rapido GP38s on your.
I did.
Channel.
I've got a short version, and then if you look within, like I said, I put a link where I go into much more detail. And the reason I do that is the MTH one was almost 2 hours. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
But when I go back and watch it, I am trying to get the person that hadn't done any of this, and I go, step by step, and hope that they have just minimal experience with soldering. If not, they can go anywhere online and see that.
Right. But SoundTraxx Webinar 8.
There you go. The LEDs, I think I went through about a dozen of them before I got a way that I do them. Is stick them on a double sticky tape, and you put just a tiny bit of solder on the end of your pencil. Mm-hmm. No guns for this stuff. You and I are not using guns. That's too much. You might use it on feeders on your layout and all, but not these decoders and lights and all. So I'll come down and just do the slightest little kiss or touch.
Yep.
And you don't want much on the tip of the iron. And if it is a little too much, and I've got some glasses, they're really not that strong, but they're enough that I can see. And so I'll lift off and say, oh, I can see where it bridged because they're tiny. And then I'll wipe the tip off completely and come back and touch it again. And it will pull off and wick off a little bit of that solder. And then I'm like, I'm good to go. I like to take a piece of electrical tape and flip it over and then just tape that down because it's gummy enough. I can use my X-Acto and place it anywhere I want. So I tin the wire just a little bit further than I need to. So if this is the LED and this is the wire, I'm actually kind of going past it a little bit. And I do that on purpose. So when I put my soldering iron, it's toward the end of the wire and the heat has time to wick up the wire. Mm-hmm. And if you're looking close enough, you'll see when they both pull. It's small. Yep. And then at that point, pull the soldering tip straight away, or else you'll have a capillary traction that pulls it back up off the LED and you're like, ah. So
it's just practicing. And
I've done hundreds of them, and you probably can't see this other than me just kind of holding it. That is a 201, and I'm proud to say the first time I did it, I just did it like all the others. So it's a 201 is insanely small. If I could go back, that's probably what I would use for my step lights. But I do utilize what you guys have, your brightness 1 and 2, which is also another feature that it's awesome. You can go in there, and if you're not sure, well, you can either test how many resistors until you get it where you think you want it.
Right.
Or you have 2 different outputs that you can program as brightness 1 and 2. Then I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the CVs are 61 and 62.
Yeah, that's the brilliance registers for brilliance 1 and brilliance 2.
In real time, you can go in there and make those adjustments and be like, the ground lights, those are too bright. Let me, turn that down. The Rapidos have a stack inside it with gauges, and the magic number for the most part is from 0 to 255. Mm-hmm. And that's where I had to kind of get my head wrapped around things. When I came back and Tsunami 2 was out, I'm like, what is this 1 dot thing? And I got past that pretty quick, and I won't, go into that because there's videos on that. Very, very straightforward.
Another SoundTraxx YouTube video.
Yeah, they're there. I mean, George has done so much work on these things, and they're amazing. They get right to the point.
Right.
When I do videos, I try to do that too. Some of them are a bit longer. Like when I did a sound car. Let's see if we can hear this. Tell me if you can hear this.
Yep.
It's a familiar sound. So
yep.
I love sound car.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a mechanical reefer and I had it set up automatically so I can, you can do it automatically. Mm-hmm. They give you that choice. And I love that because in the beginning, I'm like, that's really awesome. But when you're running your locomotive, you'd probably rather just have it go automatic the way that it normally does. So in this case, I remember the end of that chassis caboose going by. And so I put we call it a FRD LED. And then I had set it up where it's on both ends. So function 5 and 6.
Okay.
Control those. And I don't want to waste time, but I can set this thing off to the side here. And it goes for a while. Because when I turn them off, they do make the quietest little sound. And like,
you've done a lot of great work with the SoundTraxx decoders and with the sound car. So where is your YouTube channel? What's the channel called so people can go and find you? Because you've got that really great Coltrane that you ran with sound car built into it on the club layout. I think that was. And that's one I think everybody should get a listen to and kind of see what the whole point of the sound car is, because it does really bring the rest of the train to life. So how do we find you?
There's something that I just learned, and hopefully they can scan this.
Pull it back just a little bit.
Try to get it.
A little bit up. A little bit. There you go. Now you're centered, and hopefully you can get that. These are a QR code. You can take a picture with your camera on your phone, and it'll take you right to the website. But if the folks don't have the smartphone on there, is it Christopher Brown or Chris Brown? What's the actual channel?
I'll make sure there's a link, because Christopher Brown is such a, nobody has that name.
And probably
for years I had generation
and SoundTraxx or Rapido GP38 or something like that you've done, and it'll pull your channel up. But we'll put a link in the description for the podcast, and also below in the YouTube description, depending on where you're watching or listening to this, and then hopefully be able to find you. If not, you guys can send me an email, georgeb@soundtraxx.com, and I'll send you a link, because I know how to get to find it. Usually I'll just search like Christopher Brown and SoundTraxx or Rapido or something, and it'll pull it up, or trains even, because it's really just a matter of making sure you use the right keywords so that you don't get any of the other 30,000 Christopher Browns that have YouTube channels.
Yeah, you're right. If you put in GP38, it's amazing. Like I was trying to find information on them from others. They had one locomotive that there was no picture of it anywhere.
Huh.
And before I bought
that was that one CSX one you were trying to find.
Yes.
Yep. It
is a 2039, and I've yet to find a photo on the internet. Now, this one does not have class lights. This is one of their earlier paint schemes. Yep. And it's got the plates over there. And it was right when they were making a transition from chassis.
Gotcha.
And that's one of the first things they started to do. There's only one, and I'm not sure why they did this. There is one model, and I did make a video on it because I made a mistake. It looks just like this. Forgot the number, but it looks just like this with the blue top. But the bottom tank and the trucks are black. And I didn't expect that. And so when I bought it, I had them side by side, and I'm just one of these. I'm kind of picky. I work in design and in engineering, and if something catches my eye that's like, I really wish those would have matched. and so I made the video so people would know ahead of time. Does this bother you? If not, there you go. But that's what to expect. And that one, the class lights work. So it was kind of an odd duck. So the last one I showed you with the blue top and the blue bottom, they only make one of those, and I was hoping for a pair.
Gotcha.
But I got all 4 of the other B&Os because I got to say, it's just my opinion that those are awesome. But like I said, the biggest thing that really bothers me is I guess I can't just slap one of your 21 pin decoders in there. It's set up in a way that I'm going to lose functions. And those things have 19 LEDs on them. And I want to take advantage of everything.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm super, super picky. And over the years, like I said, it's just my opinion. So I don't want people, getting upset. It's my opinion. And I've had nothing but good experience through SoundTraxx, their products, when just trying new things. Like I got another video for an advanced consist with all 4 of the B&Os together.
Yeah.
And the first, it's a half hour. The first 15 minutes is how to program them.
Yep.
You got your lead, your mid, and then end or trailing. And I show how to go through and set those CVs so you'll know what to expect. And then the last 15 minutes, I go ahead and fire them up and run it forward and back. That's awesome. Utilize the train brake and everything. And that's when you really see the hobby becoming so realistic. So thank you for that. Thank you for you guys pushing beyond what others settle for. Thank you for building in the USA. I'm very patriotic. Unfortunately, a lot of stuff comes from China. But you guys are right here, and kudos on that. I appreciate that.
Well, I think that would be a good place to leave off. And Chris, you got so much information. We're going to have you back on another episode again, because
I'd be honored.
A little longer than I was initially planning, but that's okay. It was all good information. I didn't want to stop you. You were on a roll. I was like, here, let me give you the purple shirt, and you can just take over.
I've been trying to get one. But I could send you a link, or one of the comments, just put my YouTube link. And what I'll do is I'll send that same one that I sent. It's about 20 minutes long, and I'm racing through how I did the GP38.
Well, I'll have to cut you off because I just got a notification on one of my cameras that it's about to die. So before we lose contact with everything, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Chris, I'll leave you a link to get a hold of you. So, folks, I hope this was entertaining and informational for you. I know there's a lot of great information that we share as much as we can. Chris is doing as much as he can out there to try to help promote the good word. So, reach out to us, contact us at support@soundtraxx.com, sales@soundtraxx.com. Check out our YouTube pages, and also check out our other podcasts and everything else that we've talked about. A lot of great information in this one, so thanks for sticking with us. We'll look forward to it, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.